Hello and welcome to Breakthroughs with Bree, where we are discussing all the topics that create extraordinary breakthroughs in our personal and spiritual development journeys. I'm Bree, otherwise known as Healing with Bree, and I'm a spiritual coach and Akashic Records channelers who helps sensitives and intuitives connect more deeply with their hearts, intuition, and souls, and teaches people how to process and alchemize the fears and beliefs that hold them back from living in their authenticity and purpose. You're in the right place if you like to hear about spirituality, psychology, healing, consciousness, manifestation, developing your spiritual and intuitive gifts, and living from your heart and soul instead of from your fears and ego. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello everyone and welcome back to Breakthroughs with Bree. This week we are talking about relationships like I promised last week. If you have not checked out last week's episode about finding your soul purpose, it's one of my favorites that I've done to date. It's talking about all the things that I've learned when tapping into my clients' Akashic soul records, which is their soul contracts. Since this question of what is my soul's purpose is one that tends to come up in the kinds of readings I do, I gave the information that I've learned from the Akashic record keepers about what sort of like makes up your purpose, what your purpose is constructed of, you could say, and questions that you can ask yourself that is going to help you tap into the purpose that you have for this moment, as well as a very purposeful path in your life as a whole. So go back and listen to it. It's fabulous. One of the things that I talked about in last week's episode was what a huge role that relationships play in your soul's purpose. A lot of our objectives and purpose are all centered around the evolution that our soul wants to have, the kind of experiences that we want to have, again, for the purpose of growth and expansion. And one of the most powerful places we are doing this is through relationships, especially since our human bodies are literally programmed for connection. We're programmed to co-regulate with other people, where our psyches are programmed to sort of like project and understand things through other people and our relationship to them sometimes as a way to then understand ourselves, right? And of course, all of this being done in a healthy way. So it makes sense that a huge part of the way that we've designed our life and our path, both for what we are going to receive and learn, as well as what we are putting out into the world and the way that we're expressing ourselves or leaving our mark, is through relationships. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is the relationship part of our purpose, and basically how we can maximize our relationships, how we can maximize our experience with them, which is also being most purposeful in them, kind of like squeezing all the juice from the lemon. If we're going to be going through them, whether they're positive or maybe even negative, like, why don't we take from it as much as we can? Because when we are being intentional and when we're being really present with them, and when we're letting our heart and our soul guide us through those interactions, not only can they go a lot easier and we're not like fighting and struggling and having so much pain and suffering within them, then we're going to learn the lessons faster. The lessons that those relationships and those people are bringing up for us. Be like, check, got it, move on with that, right? Relationships is one of my favorite things to talk about. I love the dynamics between people. I love how we get to be expanded into what true unconditional love is, and what compassion looks like, and what support and loyalty feel like, what being seen really feels like through the container of a relationship. I love talking about communication and conflict resolution, and how we can really deepen into a more regulated and safe experience in our life through the way that we are nurturing our relationships. I just had a one-on-one session with a coaching client the other day, and she was recognizing that what she called emotional nourishment, which I thought was the perfect way to say it, the emotional nourishment she gets from her life, aka being seen, being appreciated, having somebody like actually ask her questions and care about how she responds and care about how she's feeling, and also share vulnerable things with her, and just have this like exchange of, emotional closeness, how important that's been to her being able to improve her sense of mental health and her peace, as well as just like her happiness and authenticity, and how sort of diversifying this emotional nourishment across all different kinds of relationships is really what's going to create stability and help her feel more regulated and safe in her body. And I share that example to say that the way that we can maximize the role that relationships play in our life is not by hyper focusing on just one relationship, which usually ends up being our relationship with our romantic partner, sometimes our relationship with our attachment caregivers, which is usually our parents, sometimes it ends up being with our kids, because again, we kind of like project that like very core, strongest attachment relationship in those places, but also with our friends and our other community members, and being able to kind of have like a diversified portfolio of support and places where we get joy and we're seen helps us not grip too hard on any one of those relationships, which is essentially us being in a scarcity mindset, which really is us being in fear mindset. And when we're in a fear mindset, we can't let our heart lead, right? We're more likely to jump into some of those coping mechanisms that end up being kind of toxic. So for whatever reason, I felt called to share that. And to be clear, when we're talking about how we can maximize relationships today, this is not limited to just romantic relationships. All right. Of course, this is inspired by my new soul contract email readings. I have two different types. I have the career and purpose soul contract readings, which is what I talked about on last week's episode. And the other type I have is a relationship soul contract reading. And I have this broken up into 3 different types of relationships, and we're going to follow that structure for today's episode. So I have a reading type where I'm tapping into the soul contracts that you have with a person you used to have a relationship with, so a past relationship. I have a version of the reading and a set of questions that I ask into your contracts and into your soul records about a current relationship that you have. And then I have a set of questions for a reading on the soul contracts with a new relationship that you have. And that's the order we're going to go through today. How can we maximize our relationship experiences with past relationships, with our current relationships, and with new relationships? Now let's start with the juiciest one, okay? Because I'm not going to lie to you. Part of what I love about doing Akashic Records channeling and about focusing on these soul contracts in relationships is, man, do I have the opportunity to get the freaking tea. And there is some tea when we're talking about past relationships, because usually if you're coming and getting a soul contract reading with me, there's something that's unresolved. There's something that was never really explained. Maybe there was some beef. There just like wasn't closure there, right? That kind of leaves this open, like ouchy wound in us. And I think those are so powerful for healing. There's some deep lesson there. And oftentimes I find in sort of like the spiritual healing and shadow work I do with people is when pain is lingering, sometimes there's a little bit more wisdom for us to uncover that we haven't yet. And the pain is sticking around as a way to say, hey, like we're not done here. Like, hey, there's one more thing here for you. And once you get that, you're going to totally level up. You're going to be more liberated. You're going to be more empowered. You're going to be able to be more authentic, like whatever it is, right? So I love doing past relationship readings because I think it can be such a powerful way to get the answers that you never did, right? I've done these types of readings for, of course, past romantic relationships, getting them about your ex, which no judgment, because again, sometimes those relationships can stick with us and it can be really confusing why they are even after like we've done all this healing work about it, right? So I love doing it for those because then you can get like, what are these loops that I haven't closed yet? Like, what am I not getting that I need to get? Or what answers am I still seeking that I wasn't able to get? And I kind of need to know, right? About past romantic relationships. I've also done these about friendship breakups, and those have been so interesting. My experience is that friendship breakups can be even more confusing and sort of painful than romantic ones sometimes. So I really am into doing the friendship ones as well. I've done these for family relationships that have ended or are in some sort of estrangement. I will say for the estrangement part, if you're actually booking the reading, there's a section in the booking form to put additional context about the relationship. And I highly encourage you to put in there, like, I'm estranged with this person, we're in no contact, whatever, because sometimes I'll do like an extra question or an extra follow-up that makes the reading more specific to that kind of situation. And I've also done these readings for people that you've interacted with in the past, like mentors or maybe colleagues or old bosses who were just unnecessarily difficult. And you're like, what was that all about? Like, what was the reason? That that TikTok or that sound on social media. What was the reason? That is the theme for all of these readings, to be honest. What was the reason for all of that bullshit that happened in that relationship? Please, for all of their bullshit, for some of the bullshit I was doing, like, what was the reason, right? Okay, and here's what I think you can ask yourself, even if you don't get one of these readings with me, that's going to help you maximize that experience that you had with that last person. The first couple questions that I do for this reading might be kind of hard for you to answer yourself. You could always pull your own cards about this if you'd like, but I like tapping into what was it that each person was contracted to bring into the relationship, right? So if I was thinking about, I don't know, like a past friendship that I had, I might ask myself the question, okay, what do I feel like I was bringing to that person into their life or was exposing them to, or even just like what was my dynamic, my role in the dynamic of our relationship. Now, the other element of that I always like to look at in relationships is what was I receiving, right? Like what was I gaining from that relationship experience? And that might again be something that I learned from that person. That might be some sort of experience that I was able to have because of them, or introduction they were able to make, or who knows, right? But starting to ask yourself those questions about your perspective in it, and also start to think about it from their perspective too. Like what might have been their purpose for what they were bringing to it, as well as what they were receiving from it. The next part that I do for the past relationship readings is I get some tea about why the relationship broke down. I think it can be really validating to hear, because I find a lot of us sensitives, we kind of downplay the part that we shouldn't, and we maybe distort or make another part bigger that wasn't necessarily that big. And I'll explain to you what I mean. Sometimes in our attempt to understand why things went badly, we personalize it and we make it about something that has to do personally with us, right? They just didn't like me, or they didn't love me enough, or whatever that kind of language is, right? And that perspective can actually distort our understanding of what was really happening, right? And sometimes there's other dynamics that we are sensing that we're not really giving enough credit to. And this is going to be different for everybody depending on your level of like intuition with people, or like the stage you're at with believing that. But sometimes there's like a feeling that we get about people and we kind of go, oh no, like I don't want to think that it's that. Like, oh, I wouldn't want to say that it's that. You know, I find that that's often our intuition, because there is such a non-judgmental energy, right? Versus the other one, when we're taking it personally, is kind of judgmental, you know, but it's coming from the voice of a part of ourselves that is really wounded and is actually afraid that we're not enough, or afraid that we're not lovable, or like afraid of being rejected. And through that lens, like we kind of create the story about what happened that reaffirms that fear that we're unlovable or unworthy or not good enough, or, you know, why we got rejected. That's not really what was going on, right? So sometimes I find like the explanation that was coming up for you while you're in the relationship, or while it was downfalling, that you kind of wrote off or you kind of diminished. You're like, oh no, it's probably not that, or whatever. Like I find that that's usually where the nuggets are about what went on in these past relationships. And I've found from the feedback that I've gotten from clients who've got this soul contract reading, that this part of it, this card that I pull, usually really validates that. The other thing that's really important to think about for these past relationships is what relationship dynamic played out in this that has repeated itself either before or after. Because what's most likely is that was a part of a bigger like evolution arc to help you learn and kind of kick that habit, right? So I had a client that got this, and she was reflecting that she had a pattern of sort of over giving in relationships and questioning herself when she had a feeling of like, this is kind of a lot for somebody to ask for me, or like when they blow up at me because I didn't give something, I think that's unreasonable. I think that's disproportionate, but like I'm more likely to believe them than to believe myself. Like that was kind of an underlying theme that she had in relationships in general. And this past relationship was one of the first iterations of her working that out, right? And so through the reading, explaining some of the dynamics and relationship patterns that she was meant to see and was meant to be activated in her through this relationship, she was able to see like the bigger growth arc. You know, that can be another really empowering thing to think about, is what sort of coping strategy, again, what relationship pattern or dynamic, usually one that's not like our most healthy, was playing out in this one that I've seen hints of in other places, because that's probably a big part of the reason or the purpose that relationship had for you, was for you to be able to like maybe see it or experience it with more clarity or from a different perspective, and be able to kind of like work it out or work through it in the context of that relationship. Similarly to when we take it a little personally and that can distort things, I also have a question in this reading about what's something that we should understand about this other person that would help us, right? Sometimes I think we can look at people through the lens of either giving them way too much credit or kind of villainizing them. Those are the extremes that we tend to be in, and both of those can block our closure and our peace a little bit, right? So I really like this card because it helps give us what spirit wants us to understand about this person. That's neither villainizing or absolving them of anything, but it's just like here's some insight about what's going on with this person. And when you see and understand that, you probably have a little bit more compassion. You can probably see, oh wait, this wasn't really about me. I mean, it was kind of about me, but it wasn't really about me. And I feel like that can be really healing. And finally, I do get some advice from the guides about what kind of energy should you have moving forward. I think this is a really cool one to tap into your spirit teams about, because sometimes if there's, again, this like open, lingering wounds that can come from us not having closure, maybe not having, connected with pain enough to find its wisdom, or needing some sort of answer or clarity on something, there can be this kind of like ouchy feeling every time it comes up, every time you think of their name, every time there's a memory, every time you cross paths with them, if that's still, something that happens in your world. And the energy that we all of a sudden get like snapped into can be one of maybe anger, or one of being really sad or kind of victimized, or one of being really resentful, and like that doesn't feel good to stay in that energy, So I like asking this question and pondering this, because it's a clue about what is going to help you feel most empowered moving forward, and also what's going to help you tap into the greatest amount of peace, right? So if it's a situation where, you just need to be like fully in a little bit of your spunk and your boldness, and like don't let other people get to you, that's great. If it's that you need to be a little bit more balanced, is it an element of thinking just really clearly and really neutrally about the situation? If you're getting some swords cards, right? Like there's an opportunity to figure out, okay, now that I've taken in this information and I'm letting that information change the way that I'm thinking about that situation, therefore feeling about that situation, thinking about that person, and therefore feeling about that person. And I've been able to acknowledge, what did I take from this? What did I learn from this? AKA that lesson or pattern you had an opportunity to work through, right? Or maybe those aspects of what you received in the relationship. Like once you see what it gave you, what that experience was basically like a gift and an opportunity to take from this life experience, like the combination of all of that can help us really dissolve some of that unresolved pain and hurtful energy to move forward in whatever way, again, helps us feel most peaceful and most empowered moving forward. And sometimes the flavor of what that move forward energy looks like can be unique to you. So those are some of the questions that I ask about past relationship stuff, so that you can get the most out of that experience, right? I don't think we need to be lingering in pain. And I think sometimes if we've done everything we can to move on, if, maybe we've journaled about it, or we've talked with a therapist, or we've talked with friends, or we've had a moment where we both acknowledge the things that maybe we're not proud of, but we've also let ourselves like see what was not right that the other people did too, like, and we're still struggling, that maybe there's some more info. There's some deeper levels of this that your spirit teams would love to give you more insight about. And so that's part of the reason why not only did I create this reading, of course, but I just wanted to share with you some of the things that I tap into that I find finally cut that last little cord so we can move on, because understanding the purpose in things is just one of the most powerful things that we can do. Now let's talk about current relationships. This one is so fun. So fun. Because the questions for this are quite different that you can ask yourself, as well as that I ask for this reading. Now, I still have that first part about like, what am I bringing into the relationship? What am I receiving from the relationship? As well as what is the other person bringing into the dynamic and relationship? As well as what are they contracted to be able to take away and receive from it? I think that is very fascinating and very helpful, and frankly, just validating for current relationships. I do this a lot for romantic partners. Like, what is building our dynamic? This back and forth energy, this kind of like, rut that we fall into. Not to say that the rut has to be a bad thing. Like, what kind of energy do I tend to bring into the equation, and what energy do they bring into the equation, and like, what was the purpose in all of that, right? I just love all of the details around that. And that's something that can be really cool to think about when you're reflecting about your relationship. Now, I will say that I'm about to do a group coaching program for many, many months that is about understanding the deeper patterns that are showing up in relationships. So it's very much like current relationship energy. It's going to be through the lens of attachment theory. So like secure, anxious, avoidant attachment. There's a book called Secure Love by Julie M. that is fabulous. I highly recommend, especially to any couples who kind of find themselves fighting about the same thing over and over again, because that's an example of like a negative pattern that having deeper insight and different tools about can help you finally break out of. But getting this deeper insight about like, what is it that I'm really bringing to this? What am I contributing to what's happening, both positively, maybe negatively? That awareness gives us more tools to manage what's happening with, right? Now, the next part that I tap into for these readings is what healing or contracts have we already accomplished together. I think this is a really sweet thing to do for people that we've had established relationships with, because chances are we've already spent some time with them. And I think that it can be really nice to acknowledge what this relationship has already offered us. Like what lines on our contract we have already crossed out, baby. Like, yes, we did it. Go us. I feel like that can be really nice and really validating. And I think that's a really wonderful thing to reflect on. I think that that's a wonderful gratitude practice. I think training your mind to identify what you've taken away from things, like how things have served you already, is one of the best things you can train your mind to do to have a life where you feel happy and satisfied. So looking back and like, what are all the ways that this relationship has helped heal me, has helped support me? What positive things have we moved through together? Chef's kiss, we love. Then I have some questions about what season you're currently in your relationship, aka what lessons are you learning right now. This doesn't necessarily mean that they're like really hard lessons. I've done this reading for a couple who is in their retirement age and they've been around the block, in terms of like their relationship growth. So this lesson wasn't necessarily about like them having to learn something really deep or hard. It was more about like, what thing are we practicing and like deepening into in our relationship right now? And it was really lovely. But regardless, I love how this can give validation for if there are some things that feel a little sticky right now, and can kind of help you put a name to it. And when we have a name to it again, and we can see some of the purpose in it, we can say, oh, that's why we're going through that right now. So we can learn that thing, that lesson, Yeah, I feel like that energy can help us sort of have that thought process of, oh, I can see what the point of all of this is, and not be in that like, oh, this is all for nothing, or oh, this is just a fight we're going to have forever, or like that kind of energy, because that feels a little bit like victim-y, which has wisdom, but it's not the truth. Right? So reflecting on that, what is the season we're going through now? If I'm being honest with myself, maybe some elements we're struggling with, or maybe even some things we're doing well and just like deepening into. And what could be the purpose in us moving through that right now? Like, what are we trying to gain through that? Right? And finally, what I really love for this current relationship soul contract reading is what could each person bring to the relationship right now, as well as what energy could be expanded on like within the relationship itself to help it continue to thrive moving forward. I love this really specific advice of person A, this is what you got to be doing. Bring a little bit more of this, bring a little bit less of this. Person B, this is the advice for, again, what you could adjust, what you could do more of, what you're already doing well, whatever the cards say. Each person's got their assignment. Because from my perspective, and this feels real important to me, is that when we are managing ourselves, when we are healing ourselves, when we are staying attuned to our own stuff, managing our side of the street, that is one of the best indicators of creating a healthy relationship. And it takes both partners being committed to that journey of caring for and managing themselves, and then bringing that level of vulnerability, that level of time, effort, TLC into the relationship that helps it totally thrive. So there being this question about, okay, what does person A need to be attending to for the sake of the relationship, but really within themselves? And the same thing for person B, like how does managing what's happening in their own individual silos ultimately help the relationship is just the most juicy kind of question. I was just doing kissy things if you're listening on audio. Sorry, that sound must have been so weird. And again, I think that's something you should really reflect on, because they're really not separate. Our relationships end up being a mirror. So even if it's not like a habit or behavior that you're doing to the person or bringing to the relationship, stuff that we're ignoring in ourselves or that we're struggling with do have that kind of ripple effect into other places. So having that balance of like, I'm doing my self-work and then I'm also coming in and attending to the relationship and attending to my partner and, putting a little TLC in the relationship itself is ultimately what's needed for success, as opposed to, kind of expecting your partner to support you through everything. Or if you just focus all of your stuff on the relationship, then that's going to be what helps make it amazing. And you kind of ignore your own stuff. I don't find that sets anybody up for success, but that's just my take. Guides, is there any other thing you want me to say about the current relationships in terms of people like maximizing it? Yeah, there's a big thing on communication that they're showing me. I feel like that's part of where our collective is evolving right now, is in our ability to be honest and understand ourselves and then be able to communicate honestly, vulnerably, and in a healthy way with our partners, right? That's like the starting point for there to be more emotional intimacy, for there to be more safety, for there to be more compassion. And when we have those building blocks, our health improves, our relationships improve, like we thrive, truly. Like that's when we like just expand, like our hearts just blow open, is in the presence of love and safety. That's going to be a big thing we talk about in the group coaching program, and the waitlist for that is in the link in the show description, by the way. I'm going to be announcing all the details within this month for sure. And people who are on the waitlist are going to hear first about the early bird pricing, which is by far going to be the best pricing for that. But we're going to have a big focus on how do I articulate what is really happening for me, like what my needs are, what this trigger is really about. How do I manage my own self? Because that's another skill that we have often not been taught. Like we're in the generation of people raised by, at best, emotionally immature parents, and at worst, abusive or toxic parents, right? So that concept of like, how do we manage our own triggers, figure out which part of it is on us and which part of it does plug back into the relationship, is a skill we're going to be practicing in the group coaching program. And then how do we articulate it to our partners? How do we have a conflict resolution kind of conversation where we say, hey, this is what hurt me. This is how I'm feeling. What do you think about that? Could we collaborate about like a way forward where this is like actually changed and remediated? You know, what was your perspective on this? Like how to be able to move through that and create actual change in the relationship, etc. It feels like is a big skill that people are being pushed to learn. Yeah, they're telling me that this is an absolute requirement for the kind of healthy relationships that support soul evolution, that support our most authentic and abundant living. Yeah, they're saying that, you know, for a lot of the souls that have this mission of like really doing some serious healing and expanding work in this lifetime, and I kind of see them as like the change makers, the people who are helping really push forward the level of consciousness and authenticity and all this kind of stuff that we have in the world. Like you have to have a supportive home base in your relationships. And again, this is not just romantic relationships. Like we got to be able to have these conversations with close friends or family members who we're trying to keep close. So learning these skills within ourselves, being able to bring them to relationships, and then even we'll have a little bit of part in this program about what happens when we try to bring these things to a relationship and the other person does not respond well, they don't meet us halfway, and they kind of shit on us when we do that. Like what to do in those instances, right? So that feels like the other note that the guides wanted to mention about how we can maximize relationships, both making them thrive themselves as well as like extracting all of the evolution and growth that we are meant to have through that experience, so that even if it does end, we can look back and say, no, I really tried my best. I tried my best to make it work. I tried my best to be myself. And so therefore I have no regrets. Now, finally, new relationships. This one was really fun to channel through the questions for, and I'll run through it really quick. Instead of asking what energy each person is bringing to it and taking away, because I feel like that is revealed over time, what I ask for this reading is, what is the underlying intentions? And this is so juicy because sometimes it's not something we're explicitly aware of. It's kind of like, what has driven us into this relationship? What has made it feel attractive to us? What was part of what just sort of drew us to each other? And I've done this for new romantic connections as well as like new friendships. This could also be done for new clients or collaborators or coworkers. Like the options are endless on this one. But like, what is kind of drawing us to each other, and like what are our underlying intentions for this relationship here at the start? So good. And again, that's something that could be really juicy for you to think about for significant relationships in your life. Then I tap into, what is the purpose for it right now? Again, I didn't want to get into this new relationship reading in a way that was assuming it's going to last forever or really trying to be super predictive, because like you heard in my episode last week, I believe our purpose for things are right now. It's not really about what's supposed to happen in a month, a year, 5 years from now. It's like, how present are we being in our bodies, in the current dynamics? And when we let right now have our full attention, we are picking up more information. We can move in ways that might take up more of our energy, and we're also like taking more from the circumstances, right? So anyway, what is the purpose for the relationship right now? And then I love tapping into, how can the person who gets the reading, what energy can they bring to it to help give it the most positive progress, right? Again, I'm not assuming that the most positive outcome is a relationship lasting forever, but I do think that we can have the most positive like outcome that is appropriate for that soul contract, right? So like, what energy can person A, aka the one who booked the reading, bring to this that's going to give it the best chance that it can to last, if that's what the contract is for, or at the very least is going to set them up to learn the lesson as quickly as they need to learn it if the contract isn't about longevity. Finally, I do a card that's about the future potential of the relationship. It's just something to think about. Again, I don't do predictions in a way that are like fatalistic. When I do my Akashic Records channeling, which does have future potentials, it's always shown to me like different paths. Some have more momentum, some feel a little bit more likely based on like the current set of beliefs and actions that people tend to take, but nothing is set in stone. But I think that card's interesting because again, it answers like, what's the most likely potential of how things are going right now? Just something to think about, right? And it's just a fun thing, Okay, so that's the deal on my soul contract relationship readings, which again is like tapping into the information of the contracts that we made on a soul level before we came into this life about what the purpose is for us interacting with different people that come into our life. Because that's where we extract so much of our growth and purpose in this life, is through the relationships we have with other people. And I am of the belief that when we can be more intentional, and sometimes even when we have the insight or that greater perspective of like what the point is of whatever song and dance we're doing with these people, can help us move through it with a little bit more ease. So I'm so excited to do more of these readings for you guys, and wanted to share more about the questions that I have for each type of reading so that you can also incorporate this thought process about these different relationships, ones that have ended that maybe still have a little bit of an ouch, ones that you're currently in, or maybe new ones as well. Because relationships are one of my favorite things to nerd out about with you guys. That's why I'm doing that group coaching program that I'm going to be announcing definitely in the next 30 days. It's going to be announced by, the early middle of June for sure. So if you've been wanting to do more like healing coaching with me, where you really want to learn some of these skills I was talking about, you want to learn how to process some of these deep emotional pains or anxieties in ways that leave you feeling empowered or healthy, because you don't have to be afraid of them. You just probably haven't learned how to move through them. And you want some community as you move through that. The group of women that come into my containers are just stellar. Like, they're truly magical. Then I invite you to check out the link in the description to join the waitlist. I do channeled messages, I do card pulls, I do custom EFT tapping tracks. We get on Zoom together and we do catch-ups and we share, how the content and things we're learning are landing, things that we're struggling with. You have the opportunity to ask questions and like go back and forth on answers. It ends up being really interactive. We have a WhatsApp message group too, where you can put questions, and I'm really responsive into those as well. So there's a lot of opportunity to get really customized coaching if the one-on-one coaching isn't an option and you want a little bit more than just a single channeling session. So I'm really excited to see who's going to come into this program, and I'm also really excited to see who is going to do these soul contract relationship readings, also available in the link in the description, and to hear your guys' feedback. If you have gotten any of these readings, the career and purpose soul contract one or the relationship soul contract readings, one, I love testimonials and feedback so I can share them with other people. Or two, if it's something you wouldn't want me to post as a testimonial, but you just want me to know, I love nerding out with you guys. Even if it's constructive feedback, even if you're like, Brie, this doesn't resonate at all. Was this like the right reading for me? Let me know. The feedback for these new types of readings is so freaking valuable. So I appreciate it. I hope you guys all have a good week, and I'll see you next time for more breakthroughs. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Breakthroughs with Brie. But before you go, please take a moment to either rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it, or share this episode or maybe one of your other favorites with friends or loved ones that you think might enjoy or benefit from this content. Both of those things help more than you know, so that I can keep creating these episodes to help us all have more breakthroughs. Remember, you can connect with me on social media, sign up for my email list, hear what products, services, or events that I'm currently offering, all in the link in the show description, or by visiting my website, healingwithbrie.net. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support and for the time that you're taking to heal yourself and align more with your beautiful soul, as it helps us all so much more than you realize. I'll see you all next week for more breakthroughs.